Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Catching Up with the Nerds with me, Tom, without JC, who's somewhere else, but with the great John Riggs.
Right.
Sorry, John Riggs. Messed up and hang up.
Done.
Already done. For those who don't know, John Riggs is a massive YouTuber, at least for me. He's somebody I've been following and watching for a long time.
I'll take that. Why not?
Yeah. It's a good thing. But I guess first question: how are you? How are we doing? Hang on, that's your opening. I just told you opening.
I was going to say that's my question. I got to ask you how you're feeling. No, I'm fine. I'm doing all right, especially with the YouTube, the life thing, the lack of travel as much as I would like to travel and all that too. So we're just kind of hunkering down and playing it safe as best we can, getting through all this.
Gotta keep it safe, right?
Always.
What's your job actually? Are you a radio host or are you a radio producer, or because you do a bunch of stuff like that?
A little bit of everything. I work for a group of radio stations. I am on the air. I'm our afternoon DJ on our rock radio station, but then also behind the scenes, I'm our audio producer for like local commercials. I do that more than anything. I produce most of our local radio commercials in our town.
I've seen that. I remember you did a little video of yourself going like backstage, at work.
Yeah.
So let's open the floods of questions.
Sure.
Actually, I guess that's the thing. Like, you've already introduced kind of your role right now, your job. But who are you? Where are you from? Let's start with the childhood, right?
Okay. That's what my channel's all about.
Exactly, which is exactly where we're going there, right? So
there we go.
Walk us through your childhood. What was it like? Everything.
Yeah, it was full of chaos, and I didn't realize it until I met friends who didn't live the same life I did. Because the life I had was like anyone else's life. That's what they knew. That's what they grew up with. I'm the sixth of 7 kids in a big old house growing up. Both of my parents were classically trained musicians. So we grew up in a house full of music, where all of us kids growing up learned how to play a musical instrument, not knowing it wasn't the norm. Like, I thought everyone just once they reach a certain age, it's like you learn how to write, you learn how to eat with a fork and spoon, and then you learn a musical instrument. But you get to choose the musical instrument, your choice, your preference. I thought everybody did that until I was like maybe in the 5th grade or something like that. Where it was like, not everyone just plays something interesting.
What was your weapon of choice? What was your favorite?
Mine was the piano.
Great.
Because I wanted to play the harp, of all things, because I grew up. My dad was a huge fan of classic, like old, like Marx Brothers, classic comedy. So I grew up with a lot of Three Stooges, Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, things like that. But I loved Harpo Marx. Whenever he played the harp, you could just see him come out of character. Like, Harpo Marx was so animated, but when he was playing the harp, he was out of character and he was just himself. Yeah. And I really liked so I wanted to take the harp, but I was like, well, so the piano is basically just a harp turned sideways. Yeah. And then you push the buttons for the mallet. So it's like, that's close enough. I'll take that. So, and we happen to have, pianos are, easy to come by. So I took piano lessons for years. But that was it. And then for me, because of all the other people in our house and everything like that, and just so much going on at all times, video games were kind of my escape. I was born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s. Yeah. So I was during that time when we had, I grew up with the Atari 2600. I remember when my dad first bought an Atari 2600. So that was kind of like my portal to tuning out everything else that is happening around me. My brother's fighting about something, my sister's doing whatever, I could just play video games, and that was kind of my escape without leaving the house, I guess.
Hey, it is for many people whose childhood were eventful or maybe busy, if you know what I mean. It's good.
Very busy.
A busy childhood. So that's a good thing, because one of the questions I usually ask is, how did you get into gaming? What was your first? But you said it. You got a 2600. And again, I want to go back to your parents. So they taught you instruments. That's a great skill to have, learning to know how to read music and how to play an instrument. That's great. How was that? Were they the one who introduced you into to gaming, like to video games, to consoles, all that? Was it something that you discovered with your friends?
No, not at all. It was my parents were aware of it, of course. My dad was on top of being a music teacher. I didn't take piano lessons from him. He actually couldn't read piano. He knows how to play the piano, but just couldn't read piano music. So it was one of the, he could play by ear very well. So I took it from someone else. But he, on weekends, it was during a time where there were live bands. So he was in a couple of bands. He was like in a country band and also like a rock jazz kind of band. And so he would always play the pubs and bars and stuff like that. And he was the one, I mean, so he grew up with, when Pong first came out, when Space Invaders first came out. So he was aware of video games. Of course they were, but never played them ever. Like literally, I've never, ever, literally ever saw my dad play a video game ever in my entire life. I tried to get him to. I tried, man. I like, especially like the board games that came out for the NES or even Tetris or something like that. My parents were aware of them, but it wasn't their thing. And they were literal boomers. They were born in 1943. So it was that perfect time, that perfect age, again, born in the late 70s, growing up in the 80s, where, Hulk Hogan wins the title. It's the Hulk Hogan Rock and Wrestling. MTV is the coolest thing in the world. Video games were part of that. Everything else too. It's like, it's the digital technology. Everything's going digital. And in growing up in the 80s, I mean, there was every bar, I couldn't go to bars, but I mean, every restaurant, grocery store, gas station, everything would have an arcade game or two as well. So I grew up in the arcade first. We got an Atari 2600 later. But my earliest memories were playing video games, and smoking was legally acceptable inside establishments. So in these kind of smoke-filled and grungy, arcades, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Well, no, it's an experience to have. I mean, I do remember this, having the same sort of thing, which
just that musky. The air feels heavier in an arcade for some reason. It was just it's a feeling that not a lot of people can grasp. I mean, wood paneling was everywhere. It was just a dull. Everything was like dull, dingy, earth tone colors. I mean, it was just. I mean, so much of it was, I mean, you think of 80s and you might think of like, Lisa Frank or these really bright, vivid colors, neon. But man, the 80s I grew up with was not that.
No. I mean, to be fair, like, we must have had two different experiences. Obviously, we have two very different cultural backgrounds. You grew up in the US, I grew up in France. So it's like, it's two very different things. Right. My experience of arcades was very much like a noise, very colorful rooms, and like very noisy, and kind of getting overloads.
The noise for sure. Oh yeah.
But smoking was allowed, and I remember all these guys, like much younger. Usually, it used to be a sort of huge majority of people in there were boys, young adults, just hanging out. So they all smoke, and I would come home. That was probably around like 12 or 13. Come home smelling of cigarette, to my mom going,
right.
Are you smoking? I'm like,
what are you doing?
I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It's quite a funny thing. Like kids these days, it sounds like an old man speaking, but it's like kids these days will never understand.
We are.
They'll never get
it. It happens. They don't. They just don't get it.
It's funny also your relationship with your parents not playing. Like my parents were buying me video games, but without really trying to understand what it is. Or trying to get involved with it, which led to a lot. That's why I'm asking this question. Is that it led to a lot of conversation of like, what are you doing? You're spending too much time on this. What are you doing? It's like, well, you bought it for me. Like, you to me. Like, what do you want me to do? Is leave it? If I don't touch you, you're gonna say, oh, well, we're buying you stuff and you're not playing with it.
Exactly.
So moving on from that, like, what was it as maybe like a teenage kid? Like, what was your experience with video games? Maybe like, there.
When I became a teenager, it became easier for me to play video games because, again, growing up, 6 to 7 kids, I also had to share. And this is growing up in the 80s. We only had one television in our entire house. I mean, having more than one TV would be like either you're rich or you just wouldn't have. You have a TV. Why would you have a second TV? You already have. It'd be like having It'd be like having 2 microwaves. You already have a microwave. You don't need 2 of them.
It wasn't
you just
the
had
norm,
the one TV. Yeah. That was just the way it was. And I have 2 older brothers, and the rest were all sisters. And both of my brothers also had a huge passion for video games at the time. So it wasn't just me. So I mean, we could play 2-player games, or multiplayer games. Games like Warlords for the Atari 2600 was great because it's 4 players, so we could do something like that. But for the most part, yeah, we had to share. So I got to the point where I woke up at like 4 a.m. when everyone else was in bed, just so I could get some video game time in before everyone else woke up, just to get the early jump on everyone else, and that was just I had to fit it in along with everything else, and but I also didn't just play video games. I mean, of course, I'd also play outside, and I we'd build forts and stuff like that too, and we watch cartoons. Sure, I mean we did the other things too, but when I became a teenager, that's when I did get a secondary television that was dedicated to just my NES at the time, my original Nintendo. And once there was a television dedicated to just that, man, that's the only thing I wanted to do. I was just like, I didn't have it in my bedroom. That was not that it wasn't allowed, but for some reason it didn't make sense, which is, I know it's so backwards thinking, but I was just like, why would I have it in the bedroom? That's where I sleep. I want to play video games out here in the open.
I totally get it. Yeah, it
looking back, there was for no reason.
It wasn't really a thing back in those days. Also, like to have another screen completely dedicated to gaming into your bedroom. That would be like, I never leave. My parents did the same thing. They bought me a monitor, like a PC monitor, and they just hooked up my NES to it, and later on my Genesis.
Right.
No, I was gone. Like, they didn't see me anymore. Like this
well, and again, because I still had brothers and sisters, I still had to share. So I mean, it wasn't my Nintendo Entertainment System. It belonged to the family. Of course, I capitalized on it more than anyone else. So to have that in my bedroom, which would mean also then my brothers and sisters are in my bedroom all the time too. So I think it just made more sense to keep it in. It was away from we had what we called the family room, which was where the television was, and then we had the living room, which was more where the couches and my parents' friends would come over and they would chat and have coffee and stuff like that.
That makes sense.
That was it. That was the front room when you first walk in there, and all my dad's musical instruments for his job and all that. So it just made more sense that way. But that's when I started, kind of honing down on like, I took piano lessons less seriously. I started my grades dipped. I mean, I still had pretty good grades throughout school, but during that time, that's when I was like, this is, I'm not interested in high school. I'm super tall too, but I was like, I wasn't interested in high school sports at the time. I was just this is what I'm doing now.
I think it's a common thing with kids that have gaming as a passion. Son is like, you should pay attention to school and your grades and stuff. But if they don't suffer all that much,
right,
you'll be allowed on the console.
There you go.
So moving on, as a young adult, how do you get into? So here's my story with games as maybe like a 20 to 25.
Yeah, I remember that.
Kind of lost interest in it. Like this is where around the time where the GameCube came out, the first Xbox came out.
I remember.
I think PS2 was still the thing at that point.
PS2 was already out, and then GameCube and Xbox came out within a week of each other.
2001, I think.
2001.
Yeah. Was it the same for you? Were you also at some point when you become like, because maybe you're out of school or towards like maybe like college for you guys, or
it was. No, I was in college when it came out. all of the above. It all happened all at once. Throughout high school, it was still always a passion of mine. When I graduated, that's right when like the PlayStation just came out, and like the 64 came out a little bit after that. Yeah, and it was still a big passion of mine. But also during that time, I was also working, either part time or full time or something. So, which was great because that now at this point I can buy my own video games. I'm no longer reliant on my parents.
Absolutely.
Or to hopefully get a game for my birthday or for Christmas. And then also by that time, the market for renting video games was very big in the United States. I rented video games all the time. I didn't buy as many. I didn't need to because I could just rent them and then just play them that way and then return them when I'm done with them. And
which was the coolest thing. One of the coolest thing ever. It's just like getting a game for the weekend, and then it's just
you just maximize your time. It's all you need. Yeah, and you might go back and rent it again. And if I found myself renting it, maybe a second or third time, that's when I was like, I should probably just buy this game at this point.
Of course.
And also, it was great during that time too, because then like with your PlayStation and with your Nintendo 64, you could save your games on your memory card, or before you couldn't just save your game and hope that nobody deleted your game next time you rented it for the Super Nintendo or something. You can't just be renting Chrono Trigger, because someone will erase over your game anyway. No, so early 2000s. That's also when I first got my job working at the radio station. It was still a big passion of mine, but I had to fit it in with now putting my best effort at my job to succeed. And it was also during that same time where I found a girlfriend who eventually became my wife. So now still playing video games when I can, but I had to juggle everything else too. So the video games I would buy, I noticed they would last longer because I'm not playing them as often. I still play them a lot, but I was also doing other things at that time too.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, the transition between teenage years where you've got allegedly all the time in the world to play all of those games, and then suddenly bang, the real world hits you right in the face and goes, there's a trade-off when you make your own money and you can buy whatever you want.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's interesting that I still managed to keep it going, sort of, so to speak, because I literally lost touch with it. As in, I remember moving to the UK at that time, and the passion was just gone. Like, it wasn't the time thing. It was just like literally it dropped off for me. I was like, I went from being in my bedroom playing Genesis, playing PC, being on PC gaming, and like messing around with a bunch of all the consoles and stuff.
All right.
To absolutely nothing. Like the PlayStation 1, and then it went, all right, I'm gone. And then funny enough, I got back into it because the man who's now my brother-in-law, saw Halo on the OG Xbox and went, that looks interesting. And then went, fine. So fine, we'll go get it.
Play it right back in.
Play right back in, and then that's it. Then I went, okay, I'm back in. So let's move forward a little bit. So obviously you've met Miss Riggs now,
right?
You went from girlfriend, wife, boom, kids.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So you got three children, right?
I do. Yeah, and they're all pretty close in age. Born in 2005, 2006. No, I got put me on the spot now. 2005, 2007, and then 2008. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Very productive.
Well, we figured earlier. We were married for 2 years before we said, okay, we're actually at a spot now. I've told other people this too. It's like, oh, when's a good time? There's never a good time.
It's not a good time. No.
You will never be financially ready. You just have to go for it, and you'll figure it out. Instinct will take over. I never held a baby until I had my own, but instinct will kick in, and you'll figure it out. And and you don't have to read the books. You don't have to buy all these. I mean, they have so much baby crap out. I mean, like bottle, like the baby wipe warmers. The babies don't care. I mean, no one. There's all this stuff out there, and they just try to capitalize on it. But no, instinct will kick in. You'll figure it out. You will still have time for everything else that you love too, but you also have to dedicate time. It's almost like, and you have to have your own life, and they're part of your life. It's like, you could have a baby, the baby will become part of your life, but the baby is not your life. It's part of your life along with everything else too, and let them, bring them along for the journey too.
Absolutely. And that it's one of the hardest things you'll have to go, like actually having babies, somebody who's depending on you. But also it becomes easier with time, but harder in different ways, in many aspects.
When we decided to have children, we were just like, well, if we have children, it would be nice to keep them all kind of close to the same age, not just to have a companion, but just you're already in the habit of changing diapers, already in the habit of feeding them in intervals or times or whatever. So just to keep that going, we would never wanted to do and I've had friends who have, like, once one is potty trained, then they have another child, they have to go through that whole diaper thing. It's like, man, let's just do it all and get it all over with all at once.
I'm the more extreme example where we had our daughter in 2009.
Okay.
2009? Yeah. I
know.
Putting myself on the spot. 2009, and then we waited until 2017 until we had a second one. So there's 8 years gap between the two.
Okay.
Funny enough, the thinking behind it was like, oh well, we've got free babysitting, free childcare.
Well, I mean, that's one way to look at it.
Which is paying off now.
Okay.
It wasn't a good
thing. At first.
It was a very dumb idea when you did that. But it makes sense. So going back to your kids, obviously we said about we talked about the relationship with your parents and gaming and all that.
Yeah.
What's that relationship in terms of now you with your kids and gaming or anything that is geek related?
Well, I tried to earlier when they were old enough to maybe hold a controller, I tried to get them involved, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They were okay watching. And they knew it was something that I did, but they were okay watching. I tried to have them play along too, but my oldest was at first a little apprehensive, just seemed nervous and didn't want to fail, and then the other ones just kind of just didn't care. Yeah. And it's at first it's kind of the way it is. I had a friend of mine who was huge into gaming, but his father was an ex-professional baseball player. He was a pitcher. And of course, the son wanted nothing to do with baseball. And that's usually kind of the way it goes, where it's like, my father was a musician, but my grandfather was a hunter, a fisher. My dad didn't want to have anything to do with hunting and fishing. So I figured it was kind of along those lines, where it's like, well, I'm into gaming. That's my biggest passion. So my kids want to have nothing to do with it. It's different now that they're older. But at the time, for sure. And I was okay with that. I was just like, okay, well, I mean, you don't have to. I'm not going to force it on you or anything like that.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, you don't realize it, but they get influenced passively, I think. And by that, I mean, there's that they'll watch you play. They might not take a liking to it right away, but then eventually they'll go, oh, I'm going to steal your controller. I'm going to steal that game quickly.
Well, sure. And I mean, that was me with a lot of the programs my dad watched when I was growing up. Like I've always liked Marx Brothers, but with some of the other classic comedies at the time, I was just like, I don't get it. But then thinking back on it, I was like, actually, that was pretty funny. I get it now. And some forms of music too. I was just like, at the time, I was just like, I don't get it. But now, it's like, okay, I can appreciate that now. It was nice when my oldest was born, 2005, because that's when the Wii came out. So I could hold in one hand the baby with one hand, and because the other hand, I could play these. I found all these great one player, like one just remote game for the Wii. Worked out perfectly. Absolutely loved it. So I was like, man, if you're to have a baby at any time in your gaming journey, right when the Wii came out was the perfect opportunity. And there were so many great games that only required just the one controller, the one Wii remote. So perfect timing on that one for me. I didn't plan it that way.
That's a parenting tip right there.
It's too late now.
If you've got a baby, you got a Wii.
Yeah. Well, I guess the Super Nintendo did have their one-handed RPG controller, because you're not playing Street Fighter 2 or anything like that. You're just kind of moseying along and talking to people and stuff like that. So that would have worked out okay for its time too. But I was just like, man, this is. So I made it work. Again, still taking care of my child or children as they came along, but still finding time to play these great new video games that were coming out.
I mean, yeah, it's that's what it's all about when you become a dad or parent. It's trying to work things around the new rhythm that comes into your life, that madness around you. So do they now, by themselves, independently of you, start a game somewhere, like jump on a console or something? Do they wait for you maybe to start something and then they jump in? Or is that
my oldest does more than the other two. They're into more just like the first party, really into like Mario Odyssey. They love the Kirby series, Animal Crossing. But they're never like, oh my God, I gotta get this new game that just came out this week, and then next week I have to get this game, and then a month later I have to get this. It's never like that. It's just more of the casual, Animal Crossing. And like my oldest still plays Animal Crossing today. Which is nice. The good news for me, because we only have to buy it once, So,
exactly.
So that's not a bad thing at all.
Do you take them to conventions as well? Because I think I've seen a couple of videos when you bring them along.
Yeah.
Or
I have.
They enjoy that?
They enjoy just getting out of the house for the most part. So just to go somewhere. They're kind of to the point. I mean, they've been on my channel before. They haven't been on there in a while because now they're getting older. Now they have their own life, and when I am filming, it's usually they're either in bed or, I mean, I oftentimes, more often than not, when I film my videos for my YouTube channel, it's during the school day, so they're already in school. But they'll still make little cameo appearances, maybe mostly on Twitch. They'll pop in. But they enjoy going to video game conventions, and they're still a little weirded out that some people know who they are, or they know their name. And there's been a couple of instances even at school where they'll introduce themselves like, "Hey, here's your name, and I watch your dad on YouTube, and I've seen you on there." One of those kind of things too. So that's the question that comes up sometimes, where there's people who have children who don't want them to be on YouTube at all, just for their own privacy. And I 100% agree with that. And that was a conversation we had, my wife and I had earlier, when I was just like, I'd love to put them on the channel. I'd love to just to hang out, and because there are other gamers who are dads, and just have that connection. And I was like, well, what about this? What about that? And I was like, so at the end of the day, of course, we're just like, well, we will, but we have to moderate, comments and, things like that too. But it's there's been a whole lot, there's been far more love than hate for it. So I've been fortunate in that aspect.
Yeah, it's all about trying to protect them from the goodness that social media can bring, if you know what I mean. Sometimes. Oh
yeah, no, they're very aware. And they like going to conventions, and they do, and they're more aware of games thanks to YouTube, where they will watch, they'll watch someone else play Five Nights at Freddy's, or they'll watch someone else play all these new great games that are like, Poppy's Playtime was a recent one, with Huggy Wuggy and all that. So they know the game, they know the lore, they know where to go, they know everything about it, but they've never played the game before in their life. So then when I play the game, then they're like, oh, you have to go over here to unlock this thing, and go over here, and here's the password. It's like, so they already know all these great games. Never had to pick up a controller, never had to pay for it. They just watch someone else play it. That's kind of a new way of being. It works, yeah. And
it's
that's
a new
more
relationship with gaming.
Yeah, my middle child's more that way, where they'll watch someone else play these games all the way through, and then they get the same enjoyment, the same satisfaction. They don't need to hit the buttons. They just watch someone else, go through the motions.
It's a weird one, that because I also couldn't understand it when it started. Like when you started getting people going on Twitch or whatever on YouTube gaming at the time. And people watching these guys playing whatever it is, Call of Duty,
sure,
whatever game it is. And I'm like, why are you guys watching those guys playing games? It's like,
you can play the game.
You can play the game. It's not like you watch. It's not like you're watching sports, right? When you're like, well, not everybody can be an NFL player, basketball player,
sure,
football, whatever it is. It's not a given to everyone. You've got to train. You've got to whatever.
Yeah.
This, I'm like, it's really weird. But then I actually got hooked as well. I was like, I can make this guy look.
No, there's some skill involved. When you look at it, there's people who are sniping people with using a controller. It's like, I can't use both analogs to aim that as quickly as some of these guys can. That's why it took playing video games online. It was the PlayStation 3, not including Duke Nukem back in the day, when my friend and I would actually link up our phone lines together or whatever. On the PC, but Call of Duty 3 for the PlayStation 3, because you could play games online for free. That's when I started. That's when I was like, oh, I can play these games online with strangers, and that's what I learned. I wasn't as good at video games as I thought I was, because then that's all they do. There's some people it's like I'm pretty good, but man, I can't keep up. So that's what's like, I'll be the medic. I'll just hang back. You guys go fight your battles, get your top score. Do your thing. If I see you fall down, I'll run from behind a bush, stick a needle in you, inject, bring you back to life, and I'll hide in the bushes again until decent with a sniper rifle. But
that's actually quite refreshing, because I've you don't know how often I felt so lonely in that category of like, yeah, I'm a great player all the way up to 2000 and what is it, 2006? Yeah. What was the PS3?
It was also 2000. Let's see. My child was born 2005.
Yeah, it was 5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah. It was that holiday of 2005. That's when people were camping out, waiting for weeks to buy one just to sell it on eBay. But I bought one because I wanted to play it. Both the Wii and the PlayStation 3. During that same time. It was crazy. It was pretty crazy.
I remember that realization of you're not as good at gaming as you thought you were when I hooked up.
I still had fun. It's just not the same.
Yeah, of course. So you've mentioned YouTube before. We'll get into that part of your life. Actually, no. Well, let's jump right into it. Well, I think I was looking you up the other day, and I was like, oh, what was the first one of the first video you uploaded to your YouTube was you eating it? Was it 25-year-old Batman cereal in 2014?
That's right.
What's that about?
Yeah. I have. It was when I was still trying to figure out what I wanted my YouTube channel to be. I have posted. I'll post anything. My original idea for having a YouTube channel was just to talk about anything that was nostalgic to me. So I would have talked about, I'm very nostalgic for breakfast cereal, just like I am video games. The toys I grew up with, the cartoons I grew up with. I mean, just the commercials I grew up with, whatever. That's kind of where I thought I was going to take my channel at first. Before I was like, you know what, more people are clicking on video game content than anything else. I'll just focus on video games. But I had these old boxes of cereal, and it gave me a reason to open them up just so I could flatten the boxes. So I was just like, I'll open it up, and I was like, I can, I'll eat. It's never expired. It's just a best by date, so it'll still. I didn't know what it was going to taste like. Didn't have a clue, but I was just like, I'll try it. Why not? I'll open it up and try it. So I poured a bowl of cereal, and that it wasn't good. It did not hold up.
It's actually quite fun. There's a lot of YouTube channels. I mean, the one that comes to mind for me, because my daughter actually loves his content, is Lamar Wilson, who likes always.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
He's always eating like Oreos and stuff like that on his channel. There, I thought it was quite fun.
Like the military, the prepackaged military meals and stuff like that.
Exactly that.
Yeah, MREs or whatever.
God, which is weird. So my question is that how did you get into YouTube? Was it a thing that was like, I like video games, I'm going to get into that because I want to share my passion? Was it a thing of like you said, just like I want to post random videos sort of thing? Is that, or maybe because you're working in radio already and it's sort of related to that?
Yeah, no, it stems all the way, taking it all the way back to like 2007, I think. I had a coworker in radio when I lived in the state of Idaho, who happened to have a YouTube channel. And he was like, I did this YouTube thing on the side just for fun. This is back in 2007. Yeah. And I was like, and I looked up and he showed me his channel, and it was just kind of him just goofing off, having fun. He was juggling cereal boxes in the grocery store, and it would drop on the ground, and he might fall over and knock over a display or whatever. I mean, it was that kind of stuff. And I thought it was hilarious because I thought he was pretty funny to begin with, just by himself. But I was just like, so you do this like regularly? Like people actually watch, like people come back to watch you, and they're like, oh yeah, they can subscribe. And I was like, I was still trying to wrap my head around. I didn't get it because I knew what YouTube was, but I mean, I'd use YouTube to look up old TV clips or old music videos or something like that. I never thought about using YouTube for like a local show. Like almost like we had public access growing up where people just have a local TV show. I never thought about using YouTube for that at all. So he was the first one. I was just like, I never thought of that, but if it works for you, great. Didn't think anything of it. I never thought of. I mean, he certainly didn't say, hey, you should start your own channel, and I certainly didn't say like, oh, I should start my own channel. I didn't even thought about it. We have a literal mini mart in our house too. That's awesome. My son just woke up, so he has autism, so we have an alarm on his door because he sometimes likes to leave the house at 3 a.m. So that's how that works. Jaron, that one's yours, and I think Leo has your food, Jaron. All right. That being said, later on, then I met another friend of mine who we were high school buddies. We were high school pals. We played video games all the time together. And then he moved away, but he would still come back to town every once in a while just to visit. And he was the second instance of somebody I've heard. He didn't have a YouTube channel, but he was like, oh, I don't have cable anymore. I just watch YouTube. And I was like, really? And he's just like, yeah, there's a couple of channels that he really watches, and he told me a couple of them that still exist today. Of course, Angry Video Game Nerd, and he also watches like the Nostalgic Critic. And he's like, oh, you got to watch these channels; they're hilarious. You'd love them. And then he was like, you got to start a channel. I mean, because you have all these old video games. Because I at the time I had a decent collection. You can talk about all these old video games. You're really knowledgeable. You should have a YouTube channel. People would love it. But because I still wasn't passionate about it, it wasn't my thing.
Yeah,
it wasn't for me. It would be like saying like, oh, you know how to fix cars, you should be. That would be a bad example. Well, it would be like saying like, oh, you like movies, you should be in movies. And I was like, well, I can't just be in movies. Yeah, I can't just be a movie actor because I like watching movies. That doesn't make sense. I just want to I just want to be. So then So then that left on the back burner, and he would remind me of that every year I saw him. He's like, "Oh, you should start a YouTube channel. You should start a YouTube channel." But it wasn't until I met Metal Jesus Rocks, and then he had me on his channel. And again, I was familiar with YouTube. I didn't watch him on YouTube at the time, but I would see him at conventions all the time. And then him and I just started talking just about whatever. And I made my game hacks back then. And I said, "Oh, I can make you a game hack if you want. I mean, I wouldn't mind, whatever. You know, I'm just practicing anyway." And then that's when he was like, "Oh, well, what kind of games do you like?" "Okay, I like shooters." "Okay, well, here's a bunch of great Famicom games that never came out in the United States that we can maybe edit to put you in there. And here's all these great shooters that never came out."
Yeah.
And that's when he said, "Oh, you know a lot about Japanese video games. Do you want to come on my channel and talk about them?" Sure. So my first few videos of being on his channel, I never promoted my YouTube channel because I didn't have one yet. I was just I was just on there. But then he was the one. But after I saw him film and then do some editing and everything, I was just like, actually, I can do that. I mean, because I'm a radio DJ by nature. So I mean, I've been a radio DJ for 20 years now. So it's like I can, you know, I have no problem talking. I have no problem chatting. Yeah. I can certainly speak all day long and not, you know, never get winded, never get a sore throat or anything like that. You know, I can do that. It came down to just the process of doing it, I guess. And then he really helped me out. It's like, "Oh, all you have to do is just do this and do this." And, you know, there's information out there. So that's when I started, you know, my very first videos were very simple in editing or didn't have any edits at all. It was just hit record and go.
Go.
And that's just kind of where I got started. And then I just, you know, just for a while there, just started doing videos to see what got more views, and then looking at my own analytics and say, "Oh, you know, people are liking this kind of video more than this kind." Yeah. So I'll stop doing those and I'll start focusing on these, and just kind of went from there.
Is it because that you've got quite a following now on YouTube? I think you're around 180,000 subscribers, around that.
Less than that. It's about I just hit 130,000 recently.
130. My YouTube is lying to me then. Maybe I'll check.
I'll take it. I mean, I don't know.
I'll take it. I'll give you an extra 50,000 just because.
I agree. Well, it's the metric system, so it's, you know, metric versus.
We've got different things going, you know.
It really is. Yeah, the numbers are all over the place, so we can't. You
say 100. I say 250. You know, whatever.
Hey, perfect. Yeah. I know.
It might be a weird question, but like, so you've got it's when you think about it, it's like, oh, you know, I've got 100-something thousand people following me. If you think about it, it's a football stadium for you guys, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
can be
my for example, the only thing I can compare it with is that my Instagram, right? It's got 3,500 followers, and I'm thinking it's in terms of the internet as a thing, it's nothing. It's absolutely, it's just,
yeah, it's
a small thing, right? But still thinking about it, I'm like, it's 3,500 people following you that have access to your outlet.
Yeah, it's the size of a small town. I mean, it's
exactly right.
Yeah.
Isn't that something that kind of, you know, it makes you feel weird about that? Like, do you ever look at it and go, 100,000 people are subscribed to me, know me through that medium, right? Or know my life, right, from the outside looking in, obviously. Isn't that something that you feel kind of weird or like about?
You know, it's funny. I honestly never thought about it. Only because, again, I come from a radio background where I'm always talking to, you know, audiences, 1 million people at the same time. But the problem with YouTube and radio is I don't know who's actually listening at any given time. I know the radius. I know how powerful our signal is. So, I mean, is 1 million people listening at any given time? Maybe. I mean, probably not, but maybe. It's hard to say. So so YouTube, I treat as the same thing. It's like, I'm just throwing it out there. And if somebody watches it, great. And if somebody doesn't, that's cool too. I'll have another video that hopefully that appeals to them more. But that's a great question. And literally, until now, I literally never thought about it, just because no, it's a great question. Radio and YouTube are so similar, because on the radio, I'm in this little box by myself, speaking into a microphone, staring at a screen, not talking to anyone specifically.
Yeah.
I'm just talking for the sake of hearing my own voice, I guess, at that point. But I know it works, because if I say I have these concert tickets I'm giving away, I call in right now, the phone rings every time, you know, still does. So, I mean, so I know people are listening, they're out there. It's just whether they interact or not. And that's when the interaction comes in, you know, and instead of getting phone calls, I'm getting comments, you know. You know, so instead of having ratings, I have subscribers. I don't know.
I guess the difference is that one is your job, is something you actually are passionate about, of course.
Right.
And that's something you do for a living, and it's something that you study for, that you worked for. The other one is more like this kind of this window you let people out of from anywhere around the world. They can literally come in, look into your life, and judge or not judge, or love you or not love you, whatever it is. Right?
They judge. Trust me. I read the comments. They judge.
It's just it, and that's the thing. Is like it's you yourself who are willingly putting yourself out there. It's not a job. It's not. Do you know what I mean? That's where I see the difference. Like, of course, your job is like, okay, well, that's expected of you to talk to an audience. This one is more like, how do you decide how much you're going to share with the world?
Sure. And radio is a little that way too. I've had coworkers in radio who are definitely like, never talk about this. Don't talk. Don't mention this. Don't talk about this. And I'm more of an open book. I'm an afternoon DJ, so it's more music intensive and less like when I do talk, and people can listen online. But I don't really talk about video games. I talk about what's happening in town, what's, how you can win something cool that's happening. And it's more locally based. I just happen to be a voice. But yeah, I made but I have been on morning radio programs that are more talk intensive, where I am sharing stories about my children. I am sharing stories about, and there's been, it's not like I never talk about video games. I talk about video games sometimes. But I don't really talk about my YouTube channel or anything like that. But yeah, like for YouTube, I made the conscious decision to go on, and I could just, I don't even have to show my face. There's a lot of successful YouTube channels that just show the gameplay. They just put the voice over it. That's good enough. And they keep their private life private. Good for them.
I guess depends what the aim of your channel is, right? If you want to do like a,
if you just want to present and hype up the thing, perfect. There are family vlogging channels that incorporate the entire family into going to Disneyland and stuff like that too. But that's putting their entire family out there, and that's the decision that they made, exactly. I suppose. And I made the decision where it's like, just like with real estate, when you're looking for a house, especially in the United States, I don't know what it's like over in the UK, but when you're looking to buy a house in the United States, the first thing you see is the person selling the house, not even the house. It's like, here's the person selling the house. You get to know them and feel comfortable with their smile or whatever. And then here's pictures of the houses and stuff like that, which is always kind of I just want to see the house. You don't care. But when you're presenting, you're the face, and you put, and the more you can make that personal connection, that's when that's why I am open about, like I have 3 children, and, my youngest has autism. Then I'll have people who will find me at conventions saying, like, oh, I have a son with autism too. I'm glad I'm not the only one, things like that. So you make that personal connection, and you just become their friend. And then I'll be at a convention, and someone will come up to me and ask me about how my kids are doing, how's going on. They'll be talking to me for a few minutes. I'm just like, I don't even know your name yet. I've been talking this whole time. But they know who I am. They know me because I'm out there, man. It's like is.
And that's exactly what I was on about. It's like you create that connection, and it always feels one-sided, right? Where it's like, for example, before this, it's like, I know you, John Riggs. You don't know me, but
I know you a little bit better now.
No, you do.
This last little bit that we've been chatting, but sure.
It's a funny thing, because and that's why I was telling my kids. It's like, especially my daughter, she's at the age where she's got a phone, she goes on social media and stuff, and she obviously being 12, 13, you start getting into that age where you look at people with like YouTubers and TikTokers and whatever. Influencers, and like them,
sure.
And you feel like you have a relationship with them, but they don't with you. Like they tell you they love you on the live feed or whatever, but it's not directly aimed at you. So it's a weird social experiment thing that I'm always I always found weird, and that's what I was trying to I'm trying to teach also my kids to, well, especially my daughter, but like, I have this social media where I've got 3,500 people following us, the account, the podcast account, but like how much am I comfortable with sharing my own life on this account? And, some people that might follow, you never know, there might be that one person that follows everything you do, that loves every single photo and comments on everything that you post.
Oh yeah.
Because they feel like they know you personally.
Oh yeah.
But you don't. And it always blows my mind. Anyway.
Yeah. Talking about that. it's not something you can teach. It's just, it is that, just because, it's like just because you leave a tip on a Twitch stream doesn't mean like you're automatically best friends or anything like that. It's
exactly.
There's still that wall, there's still that space, but we'll share as much as we can, and
leave room for leave room for some for some mystery.
Yeah, it's the people who step over that line. That's when it gets creepy, and that's when restraining orders.
Yes.
Fortunately, it's never happened to us. I mean, I've had creepy comments, of course I have, but I mean, I monitor them, and I have a zero tolerance. I block them and move on, and we just carry on with our lives, and there's far more love than hate for sure. So yeah, it's just how you manage it.
Going back into the retro gaming world a little bit. Actually, I had a question because you mentioned it before, Metal Jesus Rock. Like, is he a rock star? Do you when you hang out in conventions, do you feel like you're being harassed by people?
No, well, I mean, I feel bad for him because he's closing in on 1 million subscribers now. So, and he's been at YouTube for a long time. So that's the other thing about YouTube, is just because I have, like me personally, I have 130,000 subscribers. Sounds great, but I probably lost maybe 50,000 subscribers, over the lifetime, just because, people sign in and they subscribe. And then after a while, they unsubscribe because it's like, oh, he's not doing the same kind of videos I wanted him to do anymore, or whatever the case may be. I honestly don't know how many subscribers I've lost, but I mean, subscribers come and go all the time. But on top of that, with Metal Jesus again coming in on almost 1 million subscribers here. But he's been around a long time too. I mean, the average lifespan of a YouTuber is maybe 10 years. If you last that long, then you've already beaten the curve. There's so many great YouTubers, before my time even, who are just no longer making content because they've moved on, or they have, or they use their YouTube, which basically worked as a resume to get a great job somewhere else, and then now they're focusing on that and not doing the YouTube thing anymore. I don't blame them. But since he's been around for so long, so a lot of people grew up with watching his content. It's hard for him to even walk through a convention hall anymore. He loves attending conventions. He loves to travel. I mean, we love going to conventions together. He's a great buddy of mine. But people seem, and he sticks out like a sore thumb too, because he's like, he's 6'4", 6'5", has the long hair, has the unique look to him. So he's just like, these people are looking out for it, and you can't mistake him. It's not like, that can't, is it? It's like, no, it's you see who it is. He literally can't be anyone else. So seeing him at a video game convention when the convention hall is open, he's just trying to hunt for games. He's just shopping. He's really behind a table. It doesn't need to be, because he's not selling anything. He never sells anything. He buys. He shops. He's giving money to these people. But people stop him all the time. Every 3 steps, they want a picture, they want a selfie, they want to talk to him, they want to say hi, they want to give him something. So it's. Like he never acts like a rock star by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he's just like me. He's a fan like everyone else. He's just a fan, like you and I. He has a passion for video games, happens to be a collector, but just happens to have been on YouTube for a long time. And people respect his opinions on the games that he talks about and things like that. The guests he brings on and what they talk about too. It's hard for him to like go to a convention and shop around, because then all these people are like, he's in the space of video games. So which is inevitable, and he totally gets it. There are plenty of people, I'm not going to name names, I don't need to, it doesn't matter, but there are plenty of people who do go to video game conventions as guests, but you won't see them on the show floor for that reason. Like, they'll just be in the green room or behind the scenes, or they'll just kind of hang out in their hotel room until it's time for them to do their panel. Now, if you want a guaranteed chance to see them or meet them, they have a panel. They might have a Q&A. They might have like a meet and greet session where they have, just like take a picture with them or sign something or something like that. And that's their obligation. And that's all they do. That's the only time you'll ever really see them, is during that time. And are they shopping the convention hall? Well, maybe like just before it opens, before the huge rush gets there, they might do a little bit of that. But for the most part, they're just behind the scenes until it's time for them to do their panel. And Metal Jesus isn't like that. If he wanted to be like that, he would just hang out in the hotel room. But no, you'll find him on the convention floor.
So you mentioned you do run, get on the floor with him and just walk around it. Like, you must get asked also to get on the photo by a bunch of people as well. And can you? Is that a thing that happens a lot? Is that weird to you? Somebody asks you that?
it's not weird to me. I'm humbled by it every time, because it's like, really me? I'm a fan like anyone else. Just, I mean, because I'm there for the same, whether I was there as a guest or not. Just recently I was at the Midwest Gaming Classic, which was a very large convention in Wisconsin, which is the upper Midwest, and I've never been there, and I've never been to that area. So it was a chance for me to go there, and I didn't have a panel. I mean, it turns out I had a panel once I got there, because
you didn't know about it. You just went, oh shit.
Well, well, it was like, because they didn't fly me in, they didn't put me in a hotel room or anything. I paid for everything myself. Well, I mean, I had a sponsor pay for it, but the sponsor paid for everything. The convention, I have to give credit for. I did a contest, like, which convention should I go to? So the convention themselves put it out there saying, hey, if you want this guy to show up, you should vote for him. Well, it worked. And then once I was there, so it worked out fine. But I didn't have a table, so I wasn't selling my game or anything like that. But yeah, just walking around and shopping and stuff like that. And a lot of people do respect that. And it was like, oh, they might just kind of like say like, hey, love the channel, cool, thanks. But sometimes there are some people who just want to stop you and tell you the whole life story, and I try to give everyone all the time they need, because when are they going to have that opportunity again? I guess I don't know, but it happens every once in a while. I mean, especially in the video game space, just by nature of Portland, maybe a little. I mean, I've been to Portland before, so a lot of people who attend the Portland show regularly are people I've known for years. Both the vendors and some of the attendees as well. So usually just a quick hi and how's it going? And usually YouTube has nothing to do with it. It's just because we've known each other for so long.
Sure. So I'm mindful you've got a couple of things you have to do after this. So let's wrap it up with a couple
eventually,
more questions, unless you have time. So
I got time for sure.
Kind of a I don't know if it's the right time to throw that one out there, but like, you're into retro gaming. Like, where do you see? Actually, hang on, I forgot a question about. There's one that made me laugh. I saw this conspiracy theory about Metal Jesus about him influencing prices of retro games online. What's your take on this?
Oh, we get it all the time.
Oh, please let me hear it, because I was like, every time he drops a video, or you drop a video on YouTube, there's like, those guys, every time they talk about that XYZ game, that price I actually taken off eBay. So what is your answer to that?
I have probably, just by nature of having some, I probably have about 10 copies of TNC Surf Design for the NES, just laying around. Just by nature, I'll buy a lot of games, because there's a couple games I want, and then the other ones maybe I'll bring to a convention to sell for cheap, just to get rid of those. I probably have about 10 copies of TNC Surf Design, maybe 20 copies of Silent Service. If that was true, then I would make a YouTube video today saying, oh my God, these are the two games that are skyrocketing in price. You need to buy these right now. And I happen to have one for you. No, literally doesn't work that way. No, I'll say in their defense, like if someone goes on and they say, like, here's a game that a lot of people haven't heard of. Usually the games that we don't talk about the games because we want them to raise in price. We want to talk about great games that people may not have heard of. Everyone's played Mega Man, Castlevania, all these great games that are already out there. But what are the ones that people just kind of skip over? So we like to present those as, these are some really good games that you should check out. It has nothing to do with the price. Now, the price may go up a little bit, maybe a little bit, but it's always going to come right back down, not based on any of our videos. Just by nature, I mean, because again, with these games that we're talking about, I'm talking about retro video games here. I'm talking about games that came out, they came out 30 years ago. And if you want to collect the cards, that's fine. There's 1,000 ways to play these games. I mean, they might be on the Switch, like the Nintendo Online service. There's Raspberry Pi. There's emulation. I have a Mister that I use for capturing my footage. I use a Mister for everything anymore. There's EverDrives. There's so many ways to play all these great games. We're 100% not doing them, for that purpose of raising prices, to the point. I don't know if they obviously, I don't know if there was someone who mathematically calculated. They went through some of the previous channels and calculated prices from what price charting was then to when they did the video to what it is again, and then they mathematically figured out that yes, once a video drops, especially if it's something like super unique that a lot of people haven't heard of, it may go up a little bit, but it doesn't go up and stay that way. I mean, more than anything, it was the last couple of years with the stimulus checks that came in, where people had this extra spending money. Yes. that's when we saw the biggest price hike of our time recently anyway, where, Chrono Trigger went from $100 to a $200 game. Earthbound went from a $200 game to a $350, whatever it goes for now. I haven't really been following prices because it's not my thing, but I see it all the time. I laugh because it's like, no, they don't know. It's
like, I don't have that kind of power.
I don't have, trust me. And if I did, I wouldn't use it for that. If I did, I would use it for the opposite. I'd be like, is this game really worth this much? No, it's not. Wayne's World for the NES does not deserve to be worth as much as it is. I'll be doing the opposite. I'll be knocking down prices because I don't care. I'm here for the video games, not for the value.
Yeah, it's a funny thing.
But I have no problem selling an expensive game. By the way, I'm just saying.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
selling is part of collecting. So if I can sell a couple of games for a great, but I'll always do a good deal on them, especially at conventions. But yeah, but then I always use that money to buy more games to for the games I'm also looking for.
That's fair enough. It's fair enough. We'll have to finance it somehow, right?
That's right. It's a hobby that pays for itself.
if once you get it going, yes.
That's right. Yeah, especially with apps like Whatnot and all this. Yeah.
God. Which leads me into the question I had. Like, where do you see the retro gaming market community? Like, where do you see that going? Because prices are going to go down. Do you think it's going to keep going? Like you said, having a bump and then
I can't predict these things because I'm terrible with like stocks and things like that too. So is there a retro gaming bubble that's going to burst? I have no idea. I can't predict that. I know it for a while, and there's always going to be the art side of it, like the people who are into like grading games or WADA or things like that. So I think a lot of people are collecting for the sake of. Hi, Jaron. What do you got? So that one's for you. Okay. Thank you, Jaron. He's grabbing something.
Enjoy.
Yeah. I knew he'd wake up eventually, so I bought him something in advance, knowing that he would wake up in advance. I don't know where it's going to go. I know that, like, again, with the WADA market and stuff like that, like people who are buying these WADA graded games aren't buying them to play these games. It's more the art. It's more the investment, and it's only worth something to the people who are in that same market. Absolutely. Whereas, like, I'll buy a sealed game and I'll open it because I want to play it. So it's like I'm not the guy for that.
Which is a great trigger for many people online. Just like,
oh my god, yeah,
breaking that seal is like, whoa.
Yeah, but that's when you get the people saying, oh, you should have sent that to WADA. You could have got it for you should have got it for more. It's like, well, but that's not me.
It depends on your relationship with the game, right?
Exactly. So it wouldn't do me any good. I get it, but it's not for me. So I can't even predict where retro gaming anything is going to go here in the near future. I think there's always going to be those. Just like there's always going to be stamp collectors. How many people send letters anymore? Well, but stamps still exist, so there's always going to be stamp collectors. Coin collectors, things like that too. So there will always be a market for it, whether the market grows or shrinks or something. Fortunately, we're at a point now where video games are revered like Hollywood movies. It was not always the case. Not always the case. Maybe even it still seems like like Hollywood movies are still held at a higher level than video games are. But video games are still but video games are making more money than Hollywood movies, every year as it is.
Absolutely. So they do.
So there's gonna be that shuffle.
There's also a lot of collectors out there for with a sense of conserving the games. You know what I mean? There's not that many great or good video game museums, for example.
Right. We have a couple of them in the US. Yeah.
You do have a couple, I think.
Yeah,
it's the one I saw. I can't remember, but there's a lot of people that have woken up and say, oh, nobody's actually looking after the old games. Like I think there's a bunch of games that actually went missing. Like we're talking about Amstrad days, like really old 40 years old games that were they've just disappeared. And I think
they're gone forever. All these great prototypes. There might be documentation of them, but can't find a working copy anywhere.
Exactly, not non-playable. All right, to finish, what do you consider as a like, when do you say a console is retro now? Do you go, hey, the PlayStation 3 is retro, or do you have to wait a little longer?
No, a lot of people have. I don't have any specific answer for myself personally. Like for me, retro, like just in my mind, because I guess I'm that old, and because I grew up, it's like, PlayStation 3 that just came out yesterday. No, it came out 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So for me, my automatic go-to is retro is cartridge. It's not true. I mean, that's where I come from. That's what my brain tells me up front. That's like my first thing is like, well, what's retro? Well, this, anything that's cartridge based. If it's CD based, but it's like, well, but the PlayStation 5, I'm sorry, but the PlayStation 1 came out around, it came out before Nintendo 64. I consider Nintendo 64 retro. Why wouldn't I consider PlayStation 1 retro? So for me, I don't know. There's a lot of people who consider any system that they no longer make games for. So you consider that could be PlayStation 3 because they're not doing PlayStation 3 games anymore. I mean, they just came out with a new game on the Wii U. So Wii U is not retro yet, but is the Wii retro? I mean, they still come out with a Just Dance every year, it seems like. So I mean, it's hard to.
Damn, yeah, it's funny. It depends how you see it. Yeah, I guess we might describe it the same way because of when you say cartridges is retro, because maybe that's the first experience we had. Maybe games on tapes, games on cartridges.
Right. That's true. Yeah, those cassette tapes too. Well, and there's also many people who say retro isn't a genre. Like retro is not I mean, that's not right. There's say like retro isn't an age. Retro is the feeling of the game. Like so, there's a lot of people who say like, oh, here's all these great retro games on the Nintendo Switch that came out yesterday, but they're made with retro in mind because they're pixel based. They're designed like an old NES game or something. And I play more of those than anything on my Switch, really. So they would call that retro. But for me, like when I say retro gaming, it's usually like that kind of mid 90s, like even when it gets to like, Dreamcast. I mean, the Dreamcast market's huge right now for homebrews. Like there's still all these homebrew and indie companies that are making all these great Dreamcast games. Hey, I'll take them all, man. I love Dreamcast. So
and they look great as well.
They're totally.
I just got my head on a Neo Geo CD the other day.
Nice.
I'm now officially
one system I never had.
Officially poor now. I officially need to sell one of my kids to pay for it. So, but I was like, the funny thing is that I consider it to be retro, but also once I turn it on and I start playing it, I'm like, this still holds up. Like those like the gaming experience is still it's absolutely fine. So is it retro? Is it? I don't even know. I'm confused. I'm the same. I think I'm the same page with you. It's like I see those CDs.
Could be the CD based games, the disc based games, retro. Maybe there's however long it takes for the game to load. If it doesn't take very long, maybe it's not retro yet. But if you're still waiting, like especially Neo CD, man, listen, you have to shave a second time. Sometimes, like when you're playing something that the load times are atrocious. But but man, you just put up with it during the time, So I don't know. Well, might be a way to calculate that somehow.
What I do is I put a CD on, like in the console, turn it on, and then first loading screen's all right. It's when you launch the game, once you press, get to the main menu screen and you press
start. Yeah, player one, whatever. Yeah,
this is when you want to go for grab a coffee, make yourself a tea, grab lunch, and then you come back 10 minutes later and you're good to go.
That sounds about right.
It's not a myth, it's real. Let's go with the last two questions for you.
Sure.
And that's how we'll finish this. Favorite system of all time? Favorite system?
Yeah, it's the NES for me. It's it wasn't my first, but it was it was my biggest passion. I loved growing up with the Atari 2600. That set the foundation. But when the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, that's the one that I was like, okay, this is like video games are here to stay for me forever. So that's got to go with the old school NES. Oh yeah,
which also which I think are you still doing that series of videos where you just basically check if those games are still going? Yeah, you're trying to fix them, and
for sure.
With the NES top loader, that's the one you go with. This works.
Yeah,
I enjoy this. I don't know why. Usually like 7 minutes long or 5 minutes long. I'm like, this is
just
so
a quick.
relaxing.
I know, and it started out as just a throwaway video series in between the other videos I was doing, and then that's when I saw like, oh, more people are watching this than anything else. I'll just keep on doing this, and It's not always a win, but I enjoy doing it. And I just picked up a new lot of NES games recently, and there's already a couple of them that aren't working. So that's good news for me. It's each game is its own video, so give me new content going into coming up for spring.
It's exactly that. It's the uncertainty. You don't know where you're gonna get. You're just like, is this going to win? Is this going to work? It's not meant to work. And that's where you hook us up. You hook us at that moment. You're like, we don't know yet. And then last question.
I don't plan it. Yeah.
I think it's a cool concept.
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Last one.
Yep.
We said favorite system, favorite game of all time for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me every day, I'll give you a different answer every day. But because I get asked this frequently enough at conventions, my go-to answer is Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Sure. Just because, I mean, if I played every game I've ever played for the first time and how I felt the first time I played those games for the first time I played them, the first time I played Zelda, because I loved The Legend of Zelda, the first one. But I also love these side-scrolling platforming elements of like a Super Mario Brothers. So when you combine the two, and you have Zelda 2, where you have like the top world part, and you go into a town that's sideways, and you have to talk to people, and then you have to get this thing which works over here. For me, it was like the best of everything for video games of its time for its time. So just how I felt and how much I loved playing Zelda 2. I still like it today, but especially when I first played it, when it first came out. For me, I don't think I've had any other video game give me that, like, oh my God, this is an amazing experience game. Although there's a lot of great games that come out still today too. I go through the list of them between, like ActRaiser for Super Nintendo and Shadow of the Colossus even for the PlayStation 2. But
yes,
it just like the first time I play it, I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Something like a Zelda 2 is my go-to answer.
I've got the exact same thing. It's funny because you said something that a lot of people said when I asked them like what's the best or the favorite video game. It's like it's not how good the game was, it's how it made them feel. Like when it's like when you see the golden cartridge of Zelda and you're like, oh my God, look, it's shiny.
I know it's shiny. You can see a reflection in it.
Yeah. For me, it's this one. It's what you mentioned it.
See, that's a class. You can't deny it though. It's
so like, good. Just seeing that the gold, the gold is the yellow background and like the little Mario there, and the colors and everything. Like every time I look at it, it takes me back right away as like when I was a kid, and I'm like, oh God. This is probably the only game in my collection which is complete. I'm like,
it's a good one to have. It looks like a good condition one there too.
Yeah, from the US. Actually, I think from somebody from Seattle that sold it to me.
There you go.
It works. I'll take it. Actually, you know what? I've got one more throwaway question.
You can ask. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere just yet.
All right, then in that case, let's keep it going. What's a game? It sounds like a TikTok video, but what's a game that everyone else hate, but you actually secretly love?
Oh, I don't secretly love anything. I love everything. I'll openly love everything, even if other people hate it. The most recent one of those is that Cyberpunk that came out recently.
Oh, really?
I know this is a newer game. So just because I mean, yes, it crashed a couple times. Yes, there was bugs. But I still loved it. But as far as like retro games, one game I saw pop up a few times, like when I would do these videos of like, like here are all the games from a certain company, or here are some great games that came out in this certain year. One game that I really like that it turns out a lot of people don't care for, because I read the comments, for the NES, it's a black box title called Urban Champion, which is it's a very simple. A very simple 2D fighting game. You punch high, punch low, strong attack, weak attack. That's all you get, and you have to keep punching them to move through the screens. I loved that game, but just reading the comments, it turns out a lot of people don't love that game. So it's like, well, I'm not going to change my opinion because of their opinion, but I remember having fun with it myself.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's I get that a lot. Also, there's a bunch of games I like.
Yeah, it's not like the best game ever, but I mean, I like it more than Ice Climber, for instance. I mean, I can give you probably 10 games I like it a lot more than. But
yeah, that's a video right there. It's like if you like those games, you might want to try this one.
Oh yeah, for sure. Those do great.
Everybody dunked on that game. Maybe you try it. Something.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. All right, do I have any more questions for you? I don't even know anymore. We've been going on for an hour and a half, I think.
Yeah, you do.
All right, cool. Yeah. No, it's fine.
You always got questions. You'll think of a great one right when you hang up. You're like, I should have asked him.
It's always like that. It's like you hang up and you start editing this thing, and it's like, oh, why did I not say that or ask that? Oh, there you go. There's one. There's a quick one again. Have you ever been to Europe? Are you planning on at some point visiting the great United Kingdom?
I got my passport ready. My passport's good.
COVID. Yes.
And I was planning everything, and everything was going so well. And I was like, man, I was looking forward to it. And it was like, New Year's rolls around. I was like, this is the year. I can't wait. I've done conventions across the United States. I've traveled a little bit here in the U.S. I mean, Canada's close. I can drive to Canada in a day and all that. But man, this year, 2020, this is the year I'm going to Europe. And guess what happens almost right at as soon as February rolls around. I mean, I heard about COVID then, and then February rolls around saying, oh, more and more people are getting sick. And then March rolls around. It's like, well, we're going to start washing your hands a little bit more. We're going to come out of school for a couple of weeks, come back, and we'll reevaluate, and just never got back out of it. Never got back out of it. I did some freelance work for a company in Europe, a video game products company. And that was one of the talks, was like, hey, when all this opens up here, I'm going to come out to Europe for a little bit. I'm going to hang out. My wife is a huge Liverpool supporter. So right. Hopefully, fingers crossed, go to a Liverpool game or something like that. There's several conventions in a year, not just UK, but I mean, like even in Germany or something.
Yes.
Wanted to do something while I was there. And we don't have, I'm a huge breakfast cereal fanatic. We don't have Shreddies here in the United States.
Oh God, yes, no. So we can find here.
That's it. So we have things kind of like it, but not nearly the same. Trust me, the United States, we are the junk food capital of the world. So we have all the crazy breakfast cereals, but there is some great breakfast cereal in the UK. I have a friend of mine from Ireland will send me some every once in a while. It's like, oh, hey, here's the new something from Nestle. Like we don't like Nestle isn't a cereal brand here. We have General Mills, which I think is the same parent company.
Yeah,
but we don't have but Nestle also makes some unique ones there in the UK as well.
Nestle is the main provider. It's just like, there you go, everything you buy is from them almost uniquely.
Oh yeah, so
it's pretty mad.
Didn't work. So I think travel with the new variants that's going around, that's like super contagious, I guess. Yeah. I haven't gotten sick. I'm vaccinated. I got my booster and everything. I got my card. I would love to visit Europe as soon as humanly possible. We have a small little cafe south of Seattle, where you can get sausage rolls. You can get like a full tea service. I don't drink coffee, and I don't drink iced tea, but I do love like hot tea, brewed tea. So I get my tea from them, from a Welsh company, actually. So, I mean, I love everything about Glengetty's my favorite. I love everything about, like, we have a BritBox subscription. So we watch a lot of British programming.
Subscription? Come on.
Oh, yeah. We here in the US. So that's what we're getting our fix for. I mean, and Amazon has some stuff too when it comes to UK programming, from things on like BBC or Channel 4, I guess. We recently just started watching. I literally just told you with Jimmy Carr. Yes. No, I'm an insane fan of the show Pointless. So I mean, there's a lot of things like that. I mean, a lot of the great programs too, from like Royal Family was a personal favorite of mine. Father Ted. I mean, these are probably older shows to you now.
Yeah, Father Ted. I grew up with it.
Yeah. So I mean, and Father Ted took me watching a couple of times for me to say, like, okay, like the first time I watched the first episode of Father Ted, I was just like, this is kind of dumb. I don't know. But when I thought back to it like a week later, I was like, actually, that was pretty funny. I need to watch that again. I ended up just watching the whole thing. And my wife and I are huge fans of European stuff, and UK especially. So as soon as I get the opportunity, I 100% want to go there.
Just check out. I'm sure you say you've got a friend in Ireland, but I don't know. There's one great convention to go to it's the London Comic Con, which happens twice a year, usually around May and October, November, something like that. Twice a year. The best one to go to is obviously in May, when the weather is slightly more I was gonna say more interesting, but less rainy.
Tolerable anyway.
Tolerable. But it's always good fun to go there. It's this massive place over in East London. It's called the XL, and it's this huge convention center. Which so I went for the first one when they started running the Comic-Con there, and they had a couple rooms assigned for it, and now it's this entire complex, the entire thing dedicated to it. So it's like you've got thousands upon thousands of people just there. Cosplaying, selling games, comics, whatever, everything's in there.
I love it.
So if there's one, if there's 2 times in a year, maybe May might be better suited for you because there's still football going on. So if you want to go watch a Liverpool game, you can.
That'd be on her side for sure. But I'd go just to be part of the experience, I guess.
And then there's a retro gaming market, which is, I think that happens twice a year, also in July and.
I'd go there. I'd go there for that for sure.
But it's tiny. Like what you were saying about the Portland convention, which is like the one that takes.
It's not. I mean, it's like, smaller. Yeah, it's smaller, but I'm sure I'll still find some cool stuff there that I don't. I mean, there's plenty of PAL games I don't have. So
yeah. I did make that mistake the other day. Last time I went to the gaming market, where I thought I was being clever, and I was trying to get a copy of. A box copy of Super Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
And I was like, the guy was like, "Oh my god, yeah, you got a nice copy right there. You got it's a nice box and everything." And like an idiot, I didn't even check the cartridge. I didn't even read on it. I just saw the price, which was like £15, which is like, it's quite cheap. It's nothing. It's probably the same in dollars, about $15, $20. And I went, okay, that's decent. That's about that, right? It works out. The box looks good. Everything's in there. Manual's in there. And because I'm an idiot, I didn't realize it was a US copy of it.
Yeah.
So I went home. I was like, yes, let's get the snares out. Let's go. And I went,
looks cool on the shelf, I guess. But
it is up on the shelf now. I'm like, I'll keep it. It's fine. I'll buy a converter at some point. Slap it in.
There you go.
Display it. But yeah, it's a funny thing. Anyway, let's call it a day. We'll wrap it up here. We've got stuff to do. I've got to go to bed. Time difference.
Oh, true.
Listen,
I'm in a Twitter group with other VR gamers. I'm a huge VR gamer, and but most of them are from the UK. There's a huge VR market in the UK for some reason. I don't know why, but it just happens to be.
Escape reality.
Yeah, more often than not. I'll maybe, get away with the gloomy weather or something. Yeah. But yeah, more often than not, I'll be editing at night. Like oftentimes I'll edit my videos at night, and then I'll see what they're doing, and everyone else is like, "Hey, good morning, good morning." I was like, "Good morning. I'm just going to bed." Dude. So it's like these things happen, but it's all right.
We've got that with JC as well. Trying to organize a podcast. It's like he's in Portland. I'm in London. It's like,
oh yeah, same time zone.
See you tomorrow. I was like, what do you mean tomorrow? So tomorrow's today.
This is tomorrow. I know it's 2 p.m. my time right now. So
there you go. Got all afternoon to go. Listen, thank you very much for joining in. That was really cool.
My pleasure. Glad we finally work it out. I know with all the travel and the
that's fine.
Like I said, I literally don't know what I'm doing this weekend, but yeah, you caught me at a good weekend, so
yes,
got it worked out.
Got it going. Anyway, for anyone who's listening, please go and subscribe to John Riggs so we can get him to 180,000.
There we go. Yeah,
130.
This way you won't be lying. Let's get there first, and then we'll listen to this later, and then be like,
my research will be correct.
That's right.
I wouldn't have not messed that one up.
Never inaccurate.
Never inaccurate. Exactly. But yeah, go and check him out, John. I think you're on Twitter is John Blue Riggs, right? That's your handle. But if you look,
Twitter, Twitter, Twitch, whatnot now, which isn't a UK thing yet. Well, no, maybe it is. I don't know. I said in the group.
Not sure it is. I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's for everything else. But yeah, just my name, John Riggs. Nothing too fancy for YouTube.
Thanks to YouTube is like that.
Instagram as well. Yeah, it's all over the place.
You're everywhere.
I try.
You try. Anyway, cool. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode of Catching Up with the Nerds. Do also follow us, by the way, on YouTube. We don't have the number anywhere near where John is, but that's fine.
You'll get there.
Well, eventually, maybe. And most importantly, do download all of our podcast episodes on Where are we now? On Apple Podcasts, on Amazon, on Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast from, we'll be there. And follow us on social media, Catching Up with the Nerds. Again, thank you, John, for joining us and answering all of those questions. I hope it wasn't too intrusive.
No, you didn't even ask me the hard questions.
I was like, no, I didn't. I was nice.
It's all good.
And maybe we'll catch you in another episode. Maybe if you have time at some point, we'll.
I hope so.
Try and do
it live. Make my way over to the UK. I'll do it live. That's right.
Oh, dude, that would be amazing. That'd be great. Right. Cool. Whew. Anyway, that was it. That was us. And you guys have a good time. Whenever you're listening to this, morning, afternoon, evening, and have yourself a good day. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you, John, for coming now.
My pleasure.
Bye.